the universe had been fractured long before Kesk ever picked up a pulse rifle. Alliances had formed and broken, planets had been devastated by wars that most couldn't even remember the causes of. For the kin, stealth and precision were all that mattered in the galaxy, a galaxy now torn apart by endless warfare. The kin had remained isolated for most of their history, shrouded in secrecy, preferring diplomacy and patience to brute force. They were watchers, not participants. Until the Mantir came. The Mantir, a race of mechanical beings, had begun expanding their dominion over every known star system, their machines annihilating everything in their path. World after world fell to them, reduced to nothing more than smoking ruins. The galaxy, once vibrant and diverse, was slowly crumbling under their reign. Kesk had joined the Allied forces out of necessity. It wasn't loyalty that brought him here, but survival. His people needed allies. The Mantir did not discriminate. They consumed all. Their relentless onslaught forced species like the kin, once content with their isolation, to engage in the bloodshed. And so Kesk found himself far from home, entrenched in a conflict that seemed endless. As he sat in the cold bunker, listening to the distant booms of artillery, Kesk found himself more confused than ever. His squad, a ragtag group of aliens pulled from across the galaxy, had gathered in their usual pre-battle ritual, though none seemed at ease. Each soldier had their way of coping. But the humans were something else entirely. Kesk glanced over at Sergeant Jake, the human leading their squad. Jake was everything Kesk's species found irrational, loud, impulsive, and always charging headfirst into battle. Yet, despite the chaos, despite every reckless decision, Jake always survived. More than survived, he thrived. Kesk couldn't understand how someone like Jake had lasted so long in this war. He was an enigma wrapped in a constant storm of adrenaline. The humans were huddled near the front of the trench, preparing in their own way. Kesk observed them from the shadows, his multiple limbs twitching as he tried to make sense of what he was seeing. Jake was hammering his fist into the metal wall beside him, each strike louder than the last. Mike, Carlos, and Sam joined in, their fists slamming together, shouting and cursing at the top of their lungs. Kesk's tendrils tightened around his pulse rifle. "They call it getting pumped before battle," Kesk said, his voice rough with confusion. The phrase felt clunky in his deep alien accent, and even saying it aloud did little to clear up the meaning. He had heard it before, seen it in human communications after their last assault. Still, it baffled him. His species, and most of the galaxy's inhabitants, prepared for battle through quiet focus, through calm and precision. But these humans? They did the opposite. Rijik, a slender Tekker soldier, glanced over at the humans, his green-tinted skin darkening in unease. His wide eyes flickered nervously between the shouting figures, his long fingers fidgeting with his belt. "They're trying to hurt themselves before the battle?" Rijik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "What is wrong with them?" Kesk's mandibles clicked together as he observed the human's odd ritual. "It's the noise," he muttered. "And the shouting." Rijik's eyes grew wider, and his skin flushed a darker hue. "It's disturbing." Sam noticed the glance and flashed them a grin far too wide for the tense situation. "What? You guys don't get fired up before a fight?" he asked, laughing as if the notion was absurd. "Nothing like a little adrenaline to get the blood going, right?" Kesk stared at him blankly, his mandibles twitching as he tried to process the words. "We prepare differently," he said, turning his gaze back to Rejik, whose trembling hands betrayed his nerves. "I was taught that focus brings victory." Mike, one of the more seasoned humans, wiped the sweat from his brow. "Focus is good," he said, catching his breath between yells. "But so is going in with all cylinders firing." Carlos chimed in with a smirk, "And you definitely don't want to be the guy standing next to us when we're on fire." He punched Sam lightly in the shoulder, laughing as Sam stumbled from the hit. "Yeah, Kesk, try to keep up," Sam said with a grin, unfazed by the strange looks from his non-human teammates. Kesk buried his frustration. He had fought with humans for nearly 2 cycles now. Their ways were baffling, chaotic even, but they survived. Not just survived, they dominated. Kesk had seen soldiers from across the galaxy prepare for battle in countless different ways, but this was something else. He couldn't understand how this behavior, this frenzy of energy and chaos, led to victory. Yet, it always did. Outside, the ground rumbled as another explosion shook the bunker. The Mander were closing in, their nearly indestructible tanks tearing through the Allied defenses. Kesk could hear the distant sounds of artillery, the muffled cries of those caught in the first wave of attacks. The Mander, efficient as ever, were methodically dismantling the lines outside. Soon they would break through. "We could be dead in minutes," Rejik whispered, his eyes darting to the ceiling as another blast sent dust falling from above. Kesk's 2 lower limbs tapped the ground rhythmically, his version of preparing. Controlled breaths, calculated predictions of where the Mander tanks would strike next. Tactical awareness was everything. Focus was everything. "Focus," Kesk whispered, trying to calm his own racing heart. But as he glanced back at the humans, still shouting and slamming their fists, he couldn't help but wonder, how did this behavior lead to victory? The bunker shook once more, louder this time. The ground above was disintegrating. Another bombardment, another step closer to their demise. Kesk tightened his grip on his rifle, preparing himself mentally for the inevitable. "Hey, Kesk!" Sergeant Jake barked, his voice cutting through the noise. "You ready to move, or are you going to watch us all day?" Kesk didn't respond immediately. His species, the kin, were masters of stealth and patience. Battle for them was a game of silence, of waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He had never seen anything like this, fighting with noise, frenzy, chaos. But the humans thrived in it. They embraced it. Jake was already grinning, his fists still clenched, ready for the next hit. "Yes," Kesk answered at last. "I'm ready." Jake's grin widened. "Good," he said, turning to the rest of the squad. "All right, boys, we're up next. The Mander are going to come through the east side soon. Time to show them what happens when they mess with Earth." Rejik shuffled over to Kesk, his voice low and frantic. "They're mad. They have to be." Kesk's limbs tensed around his weapon as he watched the humans, their energy reaching a fever pitch. "Madness," he muttered under his breath, unsure if Rejik had heard him. "Perhaps it's madness that wins wars." A sharp whistle echoed through the bunker as the alarms blared. There was no more time for talking. Kesk moved toward the entrance with his squad, Jake leading the charge, the humans' voices rising as they prepared to enter the fray. Their faces were already set with wild excitement, their hearts pumping with adrenaline. And as they surged into the chaos outside, Kesk couldn't shake an unsettling thought. The humans had already won in their minds. The battle hadn't even started, and yet, for some strange reason, Kask believed them. The battlefield was an inferno of burning debris, scorched earth, and the constant screech of Mander war machines advancing. Kask's eyes darted across the horizon, taking in the destruction. The air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and the metallic tang of blood. Explosions rocked the ground, sending plumes of dust and fire into the sky. The pounding of artillery reverberated in Kask's skull, a rhythm of death that seemed to synchronize with his heartbeat. But through the chaos, through the storm of war, the humans' voices cut through it all. Barking orders, yelling at the top of their lungs, their battle cries somehow louder than the roar of war itself. "Stick to the plan!" Jake shouted, ducking behind a crumbling wall as a burst of enemy fire tore through the air. "Move up the left flank!" Kask darted forward, his agile limbs carrying him swiftly through the debris-strewn landscape. His mind was calculating, analyzing every step, every move. Around him, the Mander advanced in waves, their war machines hulking behemoths of metal and energy shields. Pulse cannons fired with deadly precision, reducing bunkers and defenses to molten slag. The odds were worse than bad. They were impossible. Behind him, Carlos and Sam fired their rifles relentlessly, their weapons spitting fire and led into the advancing Mander infantry. The humans fought with a ferocity that Kask had never understood. They didn't just fight to survive, they fought as if they were already victorious. "We're barely scratching them." Rejik's voice was trembling, his rifle shaking in his hands as he tried to aim at the approaching tanks. Kask ducked as a pulse round zipped over his head, slamming into the ground with enough force to send a cloud of dirt flying into the air. "Concentrate fire," he ordered, gesturing toward the lead tank. "We take down one, it might cause confusion." Kask surveyed the devastation around him, taking in the remnants of what had once been a fortified stronghold for the Mander. Smoke billowed into the sky, mingling with the last rays of sunlight. The battlefield, which moments ago had been a cacophony of chaos and destruction, now lay silent, punctuated only by the distant sounds of crackling fires and the faint moans of the wounded. Despite the destruction, there was an undeniable energy in the air. Kask felt a thrill course through him, ignited by the shared victory of his squad. They had stood shoulder to shoulder against overwhelming odds, and together they had triumphed. He turned to see Jake, sweat-soaked and battered, yet grinning like a child who had just discovered a new game. "Can you believe we did it?" Jake laughed, clapping his hand on Kask's shoulder, the grip firm and reassuring. "We actually pushed them back." Kask felt a smile creep onto his face, a rare expression of joy that felt foreign yet exhilarating. "I had my doubts," he admitted, glancing back at the still smoldering remnants of the enemy's command center. "But it seems your methods, though chaotic, are effective." "That's the spirit," Jake replied, his enthusiasm infectious. "You're getting it, Kask. Embrace the chaos. Just wait until the others hear about this." The humans around them were already celebrating, exchanging high fives and laughter, the tension of battle fading as they reveled in their shared victory. Carlos and Sam were busy organizing a makeshift victory banner from scraps of fabric and metal, their laughter ringing out above the din of destruction. "Hey, Kask," Carlos called, waving him over. "Come help us out with this. It's not every day we beat the Mander, right?" Kask moved closer, the camaraderie of the humans pulling him in. He felt lighter, buoyed by their excitement, and found himself swept into the spirit of celebration. The absurdity of creating a victory banner amidst the wreckage of war struck him as strangely fitting, a testament to their resilience. As they fashioned the banner together, Cass glanced at the humans, noting the differences between their species. Each one had their own unique characteristics, vibrant skin tones, varying heights, distinct features, but here, amidst the chaos, they seemed to meld into a single entity. They were a blend of cultures, an amalgamation of strengths. "All right, let's get this thing up," Sam announced, holding a corner of the banner with a flourish. "We need something to mark this day." With each tug and pull, Kesk felt a sense of belonging wash over him. He had always known his squad mates as soldiers, but today they were more than that. They were friends, a family formed in the heat of battle. They laughed and shouted, the atmosphere electric with excitement. "Let's make sure everyone sees this," Jake said, clapping his hands together. "We're not just a squad, we're a statement. Let the galaxy know we're here to stay." They secured the banner atop the remnants of the Mander Command Center, its vibrant colors waving defiantly in the wind. Kesk stepped back, admiring their handiwork. It was a patchwork of bright colors and logos, a stark contrast against the gray and charred landscape. "Now that's something," he said, feeling a swell of pride. But as the celebrations continued, Kesk couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was merely a prelude to what lay ahead. The Mander might have been pushed back for now, but their presence still loomed large across the galaxy. He glanced around, noticing the weary expressions of his squad mates, the way their eyes darted to the horizon, as if anticipating the next wave of conflict. "Are you all right, Kesk?" Rejik asked, his green skin shimmering with concern. "You seem troubled." Kesk turned to his friend, appreciating the concern etched on Rejik's face. "I'm merely considering our next steps. We cannot allow ourselves to grow complacent. The Mander will regroup." Jake caught wind of their conversation and joined in, his smile fading slightly. "You're right, Kesk. We can't let our guard down just because we won this skirmish. We need to be ready for anything." "Still," Sam chimed in, "we should take a moment to celebrate what we've accomplished. It's not every day we face down the Mander and come out on top." Kesk nodded, acknowledging Sam's point. "A brief respite may be in order, but we must also strategize for what comes next. We need to be prepared." The squad gathered in a huddle, transitioning from revelry to tactical discussion. They settled onto the remains of the command center, pulling out holographic displays and maps, the atmosphere shifting as they laid out their next moves. "First things first," Jake began, projecting a map of the area. "We need to gather intel on Mander movements. They'll be reorganizing, and we can't afford to be caught off guard. We should also consider sending scouts to our perimeter," Kesk suggested, his mind racing through tactical possibilities. "If we can gain insight into their strategy, we can anticipate their actions." Carlos nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. If we know where they're headed, we can counter their movements." The conversation flowed effortlessly, ideas bouncing around as they collectively worked to plot their next steps. Kesk felt invigorated, the previous fatigue replaced by the excitement of strategizing with his squad mates. They were a team, each member contributing their unique perspectives and skills. As they planned, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The battlefield transformed into a surreal landscape, shadows creeping along the ground, and the air chilled as night fell. "Let's not forget to check on the wounded," Jake reminded them, snapping the team back into focus. "We can't leave anyone behind." Kesk felt a pang of urgency as they discussed logistics. The war had claimed many lives, and while they had emerged victorious today, the cost was high. They needed to ensure the safety and well-being of those who had fought alongside them. As they made their way toward the makeshift medical tents, Kesk felt a sense of solidarity within the squad. They weren't just soldiers, they were guardians of one another, bound by a shared purpose. Inside the medical area, they were met with the sights and sounds of healing, a mix of quiet murmurs and the soft beeping of medical equipment. The wounded lay on makeshift beds, faces pale but filled with determination. "Keep fighting, you hear me?" Jake said, leaning over one of the injured soldiers, his voice firm but encouraging. "We need you back out there with us." Kesk moved through the rows, offering support and comfort to those he could. He spoke with a soldier named Alana, who was bandaged and bruised but still managed a weak smile. "Did you see that explosion?" she asked, her voice raspy but full of energy. "We actually did it." "Yes," Kesk replied, feeling a sense of admiration for her spirit. "You fought bravely. Your contributions were invaluable." "Just another day at the office, right?" she chuckled, wincing slightly as she adjusted her position. "But I'd do it all over again if it means taking down the Mantir." As they moved through the medical tent, Kesk found himself reflecting on the true cost of their victories. Each bandage wrapped around a soldier was a testament to the sacrifices made. He felt a deep-seated determination to protect them, to fight for their survival, knowing that the bond they shared would only grow stronger through adversity. As night fell, they regrouped outside, huddled close for warmth as they shared stories of their experiences. The battlefield transformed into a camp of camaraderie, laughter mingling with the distant sounds of artillery as they exchanged tales of bravery and mischief. Kesk paired up with Rijik, their synergy evident as they worked together seamlessly. As they ventured out into the field, the remnants of the previous battle still smoldering, Kesk couldn't help but feel a sense of pride swell within him. "You're adapting well," Rijik remarked, his voice low as they crept through the foliage. "I can see the way you've embraced our methods." "It is a necessity," Kesk replied, scanning the surroundings for signs of the Mantir. "Survival demands flexibility." The two moved with stealth, each step calculated as they surveyed the area. Kesk felt a rush of excitement. This was what he was trained for, the art of war and strategy woven together. But now, he fought not just for himself, but for his squad, his family. As they reached a high vantage point overlooking the battlefield, Kesk crouched low beside Rijik, scanning the horizon. They spotted a cluster of Mantir tanks regrouping, their hulking forms moving with mechanical precision. The sight sent a shiver down his spine, a reminder of the relentless nature of their enemy. "Look," Rijik whispered, pointing toward a nearby ridge where a small contingent of Mantir soldiers were preparing for their next assault. "We need to report this back to Jake." Kesk nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "If we can disrupt their plans before they launch their attack, we may be able to catch them off guard." They quickly moved back, retracing their steps as they made their way toward their squad's location. Kesk felt a sense of urgency propel him forward, the weight of their mission pressing down on him. As they arrived back at the command center, Jake was already assembling the rest of the squad, their faces filled with determination. "What did you find?" Jake asked, his gaze sharp and focused. Kesk and Rijik quickly relayed their observations, outlining the positions of the Mantir tanks and troops. The squad gathered closer, their expressions serious as they absorbed the information. "We need to act fast," Mike said, his brow furrowed. "If we don't hit them first, they'll overrun us." "Then we hit them hard and fast," Jake replied, a fierce determination in his voice. "Kesk, Rejik, you lead the charge. Use your knowledge of the terrain to our advantage." The squad quickly organized, adrenaline coursing through their veins. Kesk felt the familiar rush of excitement, the anticipation of battle igniting a fire within him. They were ready to face the Mandarin again, armed with their newfound strategies and the bond they had forged in the chaos of war. As they moved into position, Kesk felt the weight of his pulse rifle in his hands, the familiar contours comforting against his grip. The sounds of battle echoed in the distance, a reminder of the chaos that awaited them. "Stay sharp," Jake warned as they approached their ambush point. "We need to catch them off guard." Kesk's heart raced as they took their positions, each squad mate knowing their role in the plan. The anticipation hung heavy in the air as they waited, the tension thick enough to cut. And then, as the Mandarin tanks began to move into view, Kesk's instincts kicked in. "Now!" he shouted, and the squad erupted into action. Gunfire rang out, echoing across the battlefield as they unleashed a torrent of fire upon the unsuspecting Mandarin. The element of surprise worked in their favor, and for a moment, it felt like they were invincible. "Push forward!" Jake roared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Keep them pinned down!" Kesk felt a surge of adrenaline as he charged forward, his limbs moving instinctively as he fired his rifle. The Mandarin soldiers staggered under the onslaught, confusion rippling through their ranks. "Concentrate fire!" Kesk yelled, directing his squad mates as they took aim at the nearest tank. "Aim for the weak points!" The battlefield erupted into chaos as they pressed the attack, moving as a cohesive unit. The Mandarin, caught off guard, struggled to regroup, their advance faltering as the humans pressed forward with relentless determination. Kesk's heart raced with exhilaration. This was the chaos he had come to embrace, a whirlwind of noise and fury, where every shot fired brought them closer to victory. Amidst the clash of battle, he felt the bond between his squad mates strengthen, their trust in one another solidifying with each successful maneuver. They were no longer just allies, they were a force to be reckoned with, an unstoppable tide of chaos sweeping across the battlefield. "Keep it up! We're breaking through!" Jake shouted, his voice a rallying cry that ignited their spirits. Kesk felt a surge of energy coursing through him as they pushed onward, determination propelling them forward. The Mandarin, once a formidable foe, were now reeling, struggling to adapt to the unpredictable tactics of their attackers. "Flank left!" Mike shouted, pointing toward an opening in the enemy lines. Kesk's squad surged forward, taking advantage of the disarray.